everyone, and welcome to the newest episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I am G, joined by my always wonderful co-host, Ray, from Whimsical Pictures.
Hi, guys.
And this month we are doing kind of a series spotlight, more of, I guess, like a debut spotlight. Yep. This is a book that has just recently been released, really last week in English. So fresh, hot off the presses. This is a series that we've talked about or mentioned quite a bit on the podcast prior to this, as Ray is a big fan. But this month we are going to be talking about Colette Decides to Die. Yay! Woohoo!
Yay!
Crowd goes wild.
Yes. As G said, I am a huge fan of this series. I've read all 20 volumes in Japanese. And I screamed and hollered to everyone I know when it got licensed or announced for release in English. And now I have it in my hands, and I'm very, very happy. Because I can make G read it.
Yes, yeah. This is what our friendship consists of, forcing our favorite things on each other, because it is truly the greater good. So we're going to be talking about the first English volume, which is actually an omnibus release of volumes 1 and 2 of this series, Colette Decides to Die. As Ray mentioned, this is 20 volumes in its entirety in Japanese, so we will be getting 10 of these omnibus editions. This is a Viz Media / Shojo Beat title. The series is written and drawn by Alto Yukimura, and I believe it's from... Is this a Hana...
Yes, it's a Hana to Yume series.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense if you happen to know that one of Hana to Yume's other big flagships has been Snow White with the red hair.
Yes, yeah. Very similar series. Not identical, but similar vibes. So if you like that series, you will enjoy this one. If you enjoy this one, you'll probably like the other. Just solid shoujo romance series. So for this particular episode, we're kind of flipping the script, where normally it's I'm the one who's read it and Ray is the newbie, but this month I am the newbie. I read this first volume for the first time, obviously, and Ray has read it all in Japanese prior. Did you read this English volume for...
Yes.
Oh,
yes, I did. So we're going off the same volume here.
Yes, yeah. Although, of course, Ray will have context and further knowledge.
I mean, yes, but I also feel like this is a series where it's like, in reading this first 2 volumes, you kind of know what the series is going for.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially once you get that second volume in there. Mm-hmm. You kind of, you know the trajectory. I think you could probably guess how it ends. Vibes-based series, very much. Mm-hmm. Shall I give a rundown of the premise?
Absolutely.
Pretty simple. So we've got a sort of a vaguely European fantasy world, where we meet our main character, very spirited girl named Colette, who we meet just absolutely at the end of her rope. She is exhausted overworked, underappreciated, the only apothecary in her tiny mountain town that's sort of, several days off from the next town. And she is just burnt out. So she's sort of taking a little bit of a breather, standing by her well, just needing to stop for a second. And she's looking into her well, and she remembers an old story that she heard when she was a kid, that if you jump into a well, you'll find yourself in another world. And as she's looking over the edge of this well, she falls in, and finds herself in another world, specifically in a jail cell, underground, surrounded by skeletons. And she is at first alarmed, but very quickly relieved, because she finds that she will never have to work another day in this wonderful dank cell. She's got a room all to herself. But she mentions that she is a healer, an apothecary, and the skeletons go, "You're a healer? Well, that's just what we need." And they cart her to their lord and master, who is bedridden with a mysterious ailment. Their master, of course, being the lord of the underworld, Hades himself. Because although this like fantasy country the series takes place in is not remotely Grecian, there's Greek gods here. More than one even. So Hades is again bedridden with a terrible fever and these rashes all over his body. And Colette is, unfortunately for herself, a workaholic, and finds that she just can't leave this guy alone without figuring out what's wrong with him and trying to fix it. And so she begins her adventures as the underworld's official apothecary, traveling back and forth through the well, out back of her clinic, to the underworld and back to, I guess, take care of her various patients, including Hades. And it kind of goes from there. Some chapters will be about her dealing with patients. Some of them will be about her apprentices and her sort of trying to teach them. And a lot of the chapters will be about the various goings-on in the underworld, Colette and Hades sort of getting to know each other better, and the various other denizens of the celestial realm. We meet some other Greek gods, especially in Volume 2. So yeah.
As Roy said, if this is very much you have read this series before. Not necessarily this series, but you have certainly, if you're a shoujo fan, you've read this style of story before. There's not a huge amount that, is reinventing the wheel, but it doesn't need to. It's a very... the relationship between Colette and Hades is very solid. They're both very respectful of each other insofar as appreciating hard work. Is something that they recognize very strongly in each other, even from this first volume. And it reflects on their attitudes towards their responsibilities, which feeds into their desire to help and support each other. Again, this is not, new ground to be tread, but I really enjoyed this first volume. It kind of goes without saying that I was looking forward to this. I didn't necessarily go blind into it because Ray has talked about the series before, but it was very nice to properly sit down and enjoy it for not only what it is, but also for just something that's not overly complicated, something that you don't have to like super duper engage your brain with. It's just
this is my Iyashike of choice.
Yes. It's one of those things that, like, you don't have to be following a timeline, and there's not a whole bunch of mysteries or questions happening. It's fairly episodic. There'll be a different, whether it's a different patient or a different, problem that comes up. It gets resolved within 1 to 2 chapters, sometimes 3. And it's just sweet. And, at the end of the day, both Hades and Colette are lovely people / gods. And although they get kind of, well, especially Colette early on is very disillusioned with her work, which is why she kind of jumps into the well and has that urge to escape from her responsibilities. She recognizes pretty quickly that she's the reason she hasn't been able to appreciate her role and her work and helping people is because she's just not looking after herself, which is something she like immediately recognizes in other people when they're not looking after themselves. But I think it's the curse of the hard worker that you're like, yes, everyone else needs to rest and look after themselves, but I've got shit to do. I don't need to rest. I don't need to look after myself. Who else is gonna do this? The
way that, like, this past week I had, like, a therapy appointment, and, like, I was just, I went on about, like, my problems first, and then I was, like, really hesitant to talk about that stuff, but then I started talking about this kid I've been working with and reading, and I just was going on and on and on, and my therapist was just like, you're describing yourself. And I'm like, no, I'm describing my student.
No, how dare you? This has nothing to do with me. At all. Lovely listeners, I was just complaining to Ray prior to us starting that, like, currently at work, my life is just crazy, and it won't stop being crazy for weeks and weeks and weeks until mid-December at this point. And it's been a lot. But I was just like, this weekend, I'm not doing anything. If I even have to leave bed, it's gonna be too much. I just don't want to. I'm gonna be lazy. And that's the first time I've, like, acknowledged and admitted that in a long time. And probably not helped by the sheer exhaustion of last week. So
what we're saying is we're the target audience.
Exactly. What we're saying is we relate.
Which is why this series, like, spoke to me in the first place. Is like, I just really appreciate that, like, this is a series about, like, 2 people who put way too much of themselves into their work, recognize that in each other, and sort of respect each other's, like, respect for hard work,
Mm-hmm.
while also kind of keeping each other in check a little bit, or learning to as they get closer. A lot of the chapters will be about, like, the one where we get introduced to Colette's little apprentices is, like, all about, you know, how important it is to trust your coworkers and delegate. um, and, you know, we have, one where, like, Hades, is getting really stressed out because, he has to go and judge, the souls that come into the underworld. And there's been another plague on the surface, so he's, you know, essentially working overtime. And then they go to the fields of asphodel, which in this version of the underworld is like heaven. I know that's weird, but, you know, we're playing fast and loose with Greek mythology.
Yeah. If you start questioning the anime bullshit, you're never gonna get anywhere.
So the fields of asphodel with the flowers and stuff is like heaven. It's where the good spirits go. And like he takes Colette there and he's like, this is what makes it all worth it. Which, like, that was the part where me, like, as a teacher, I'm like, yeah, it's true. That's true. So there's a lot about, like, work and the value of hard work and respecting, like, people who just have a really strong work ethic, which is something that's important to me and that I really value. So, you know, it's not like something new and amazing or anything, but it's just like these particular characters having these particular struggles in this particular Iyashikei series, like, hits for me. I also I like a good death god, you know. We've had a lot of sexy Hades in media, but none of them are as sweet as this Hades, so.
Hades with a heart of gold.
And
Hades
three little puppies.
And 3 little puppies. Hades, like, historically or, like, traditionally has always been just a wife guy, so that's always like just inherent to his character. But yeah, the sweet shoujo manga, not there's a difference between, like, a sultry sexy Hades and, like, a sweet sexy Hades.
Yeah,
and this is certainly the latter.
Yeah. I love him. You know he's my type. Yeah,
well, of course. Yeah, this is certainly like soft boy Hades. He, as Ray said, has 3. Well, I mean, Kerberos is, like, obviously a 3-headed dog within the series, but when they're hungry, they turn into 3 tiny little puppies.
Cerber and Russ.
Yeah. Which is very cute. He has a whole bunch of, like, skull-headed servants who have really cutesy, moe-looking skulls.
Yeah.
To which the author herself was like, I tried to do a more realistic one, and she was like, what kind of genre is this? This doesn't...
What's extra cute about them is, like, I know that this is where I get annoying about having read it in Japanese, because there's some things that just can't be translated. All of Hades' little, like, minions and stuff, they have very strong, I guess, sort of cartoon character voices going on, and all the skeletons just talk like these, like, crotchety old men.
Brilliant.
And it's just very cute. I personally, especially when we meet, like, Harry, the tailor.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about them being, like, explicitly masculine gendered. Because while, like, the speech patterns of most of the skeletons are very clearly masculine, which would make you, like, come and meet, like, Harry, who has a very feminine speech pattern, and go, oh, this is, like, you know, gay male fashion designer. But, none of the skeletons are, like, explicitly gendered in Japanese. And the series kind of switches between treating Harry as, like, kind of an effeminate man and kind of like a mother. So it's like, I was hoping for some they them pronouns, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, it's always hard, I think, sometimes to translate those nuances into English without, like, making it a big whole thing and having to, I don't know. I think it's a very fine line, and sometimes you just have to make a imperfect decision and roll with the consequences, bad or good, with that as well.
Yeah, and like it's a nitpick. I was just like, the other one we meet is Karen, the ferryman.
Yes, yeah.
Him in Japanese, he talks like an old-timey, like, ferryman. Like, a very specific way of talking. So obviously that can't really carry over, but I love Karen. You don't get to know much about him yet, but his whole story is so sweet. Yeah.
So I, again, being the new one to this series, I did appreciate, I mean, it probably makes sense financially for Viz to do it this way, but I do think that this series benefits from an omnibus release, because you do get more of that, I guess, episodic style of character storytelling, and more foundational building of the relationship with Colette and Hades in that second volume versus the first. The first is a lot of setup, and we see this a lot in most manga series. But I
also find that this series, obviously, like, most manga start out as a one-shot, but this one you can definitely, like, there's a very clear, like, cutoff point where the one-shot ended, and then it just keeps going.
Yeah.
So, and that takes up, like, a good chunk of the first volume, so I think having the second volume, you can see the series kind of start to hit its stride, so...
Well, that's the thing, right, is that, you know, I typically find that, I mean, there's some manga series that just, like, hit it out of the gate from chapter 1, but most do take a little while to not even warm up, but, like, just evolve into something stronger than that initial one-shot, or become a little bit more established in its world or general premise or whatever. And it does benefit from having like an omnibus release in English, because I do think that, and this is me maybe making sweeping, generalized statements about the English-speaking manga community, but I do find that, like, there's very much some judgment that happens if a series isn't, like, fabulous out the gate, right? Like, there's a lot of, and understandably, manga is a more expensive indulgence in English versus Japanese. So if a series isn't, like, the best thing you've ever read within, like, 3 chapters, or the first volume, it's sometimes more of a push to try to get people to read more. I think it's the same with, like, a lot of the stuff that we've seen in omnibus releases prior. But I think also, like, because we have been getting more shoujo licensed, not just by Shojo Beat, but from Yen and Kodansha and all of these places, and I do think that we know, whether for better or worse, shoujo doesn't sell as well as other demographics of manga, and so by, like, making a series available in as few as books possible, it means more people will stick with it over time, right? Because I don't know that, I don't want to say that this series couldn't work as 20 volumes, like 20 single volumes in English, but when we already have 25 volumes of Snow White with the red hair, and then you have stuff like Yona, which has been going for over 40 now, and plus you have things like other publishers to fight with, I guess.
Ancient Magus Bride comes to mind.
Yes, yeah.
And the one with the lion, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
that everyone likes.
Sacrificial
yeah.
beasts, whatever that one is.
Like, this is my supernatural boyfriend genre is hot as always.
Very hot as always. Very, very popular. So I think that by presenting this as, like, 10 larger volumes will encourage more people to pick it up and not feel like, oh, you know, if I start this, I don't want to start this because I'm stuck having to collect 20 volumes. I know that's a mental thing, but, like, I do think that there is, plus obviously it's cheaper for fans in the long run buying omnibus editions, and cheaper for publishers put out omnibus editions. So, you know, there's a lot at play there, but I do think it's an interesting trend we're seeing across the board, not just with shoujo, but I think shoujo is suited to it a little bit more, even than like some seinen and things that we've gotten recently.
I think that buying 10 volumes is definitely a lot less overwhelming feeling than buying 20. So,
well, it's kind of like that thing where, you know, people, like, for me, I started with Snow White with the red hair as it was starting to come out, right? So, you know, although there's 25 or 6 volumes, whatever it is, that's been an accumulation over 8 years or however long it's been now at this point. And in the same way, like, obviously this isn't a series you or I collect, but there's a lot of people who own all of One Piece, and although there's box sets and things like that, and there are omnibus releases of that, there are people who would have started with, like, Volume 1 of One Piece when it was first released 15 years ago, and now have the 100-odd volumes. And if you were to look at that as a new fan, especially coming into wanting to collect it, again, a little bit of a different situation with One Piece, obviously, because of its sheer popularity. But, you know, with anything, right? Rome wasn't built in a day, so anything that, because we've seen such a huge increase in like manga just being popular ever since COVID, right? When everyone was stuck in their house and needed something fun and interesting to do, and manga and anime really, really exploded in popularity. And the easier it is for a publisher to entice you to buy in this current market, I think is a good thing. And it just so happens that this is a series that, like, I know you weren't very optimistic with it being licensed.
I mean, the main thing I was worried about was the length.
Yes, yeah.
Because, again, we already have Snow White with the red hair. Mm-hmm. And while I think the series is very appealing to people who like that series, it's like, you know, how many of them are going to buy another 20-volume series, you know? But, so I think omnibuses are the right call here, for sure. Because a lot more of those people are going to be, like, more willing to pick up the first omnibus of a series that's only going to be 10 volumes than the first single for a series that is going to be essentially a $200 commitment.
Yeah, more than
yeah,
$200 US commitment. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was the right call on their part. Any shape and form that I can get this series in English, I am so happy.
Question maybe, but obviously because you have read it, but I always find it interesting to see how, like, these sorts of reimaginings of Greek myth reimagine some of these gods, but in particular in this case Zeus for this series.
Look, he's accurate. He's lore accurate Zeus.
If he was lore accurate Zeus, he'd be a lot. I don't know that he'd fit into this series.
He's the cozy version of lore accurate Zeus. Like, he's still horny and a little creepy. But also he turns into a little cat and everybody calls him Tama.
And he's just so well, again, in this first volume, it's like, oh, he seems very upset that he could have possibly upset his brother in forcing his
him
big
brother
or tricking.
He's like the irresponsible little brother.
Yeah, traditional Zeus don't give a shit. He
absolutely not.
let that guy burn. Who fucking cares? So that was like, if you had reading it, I was fairly sure that, like, okay, this character, there's something going on here. Like, this is not just a human character. But
that's not a human.
That's not a human. This is not how humans act.
I really appreciate that they introduced Zeus as a character by having him just, like, doubled over with diarrhea.
Yeah, horrible diarrhea. I agree. But also, like, when they, I guess, revealed that it was Zeus, I was like, oh, yeah, no, I would have never picked that. Like, maybe I should have been smarter about it, and maybe I would have realized, but Zeus would not have been my first guess.
When you meet Hermes, you'll be like, yeah.
Okay. Well, Demeter was like, okay, yeah, no, I see what we're doing.
Persephone conveniently does not exist.
Well, she couldn't. There's no way she could exist in this world because, like, how are you gonna break up a marriage as perfect as Hades and Persephone by, like, inserting your OC do not steal, Colette?
It's more like Colette is Persephone.
Yes. I kind of, well, obviously by you saying that, this isn't how it's gonna go, but it was just my kind of assumption that she would become that, obviously she's gonna become that Persephone character. She's gonna be in a relationship with Hades. That's the whole point of the manga, but, like...
What? They're gonna get together?
They're gonna get together? No way! This is who... but, like, I didn't know whether or not we were gonna find out, like, some bullshit to be like, oh no, she's actually Persephone. It's kind of a relief that well, I don't know. This is me speculating, but it's kind of good to hear that you're alluding that that's not what happens. Like, it's not like she finds out her real name is Persephone or something.
No.
Okay.
The backstory we have for her is her backstory.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool.
She's got amnesia. No.
Oh, her name's Colette, but that's her middle name. That's just her name. She inherited
Persephone,
when she,
Colette, Hades.
After her whole family died. You know.
Yeah. I mean, you know,
understand
with a love interest being the god of the dead, there's a focus on the inevitability of mortality throughout the series, so it would feel pretty cheap if she said that her whole family died in a plague, and it turned out that her whole family didn't die in a plague when we meet all these people dealing with plague around her because she's a doctor. That would feel bad. And this series is about feeling good.
I'm not saying that, like, her family couldn't have all actually died from plague, but I feel like there could have been a human person called Persephone one time. I just, like, you know, there's just some... obviously, to your point, it's not going to happen, so, like, I'm glad that that's not on the list of things that the author, like, decided they had to do to kind of stick to the Greek mythiness of it all, which is like, you know, there's ways to do that, but obviously it doesn't matter. The other thing that, like, in particular to this volume that I don't know is a me thing, or not a me thing, but, like, reading this first volume, there was one turn of phrase that I was like, I don't know if this is a normal turn of phrase in other countries, but I have never heard of this before. And it's the one where I think there's a line where Colette says, it's like, oh, I guess it's time to stop collecting wool and get back to work or whatever. And I don't know I've never heard that before. Is that a thing that people say?
I don't remember what this is, so I'm sorry.
I will, let me see. I don't know that I'm gonna find it, because there's so many pages. Yeah, there's a phrase where she's like reminiscing or something, whilst there's also a patient, and then in a way it was to say, like, oh, I need to stop, you know, procrastinating or whatever. It's time to get to work, to herself. So, like, contextually I understood it, but it was just, like, a really weird way of putting it, and I don't know if that's just because I'm a stupid Australian who's never heard that.
I don't know. I didn't notice anything, but it might have just been something. There were a couple parts in this translation where I was like, "That's kind of a weird way to say that." So, also more typos than I typically expect from like a Viz release. But so I don't know if it was a little rushed or what. You know, maybe not. I don't want to, like, assume anything about someone's hard work. But, you know, there were a couple points where I was like, that's maybe a little bit of an awkward translation. So it might very well just be one of those.
Yeah, because it just seemed like... Yeah, just like a weird way to put something. And it wasn't one of those things that was, like, obviously, like, oh, they, you know, this is an American release, so they're using miles or whatever versus kilometers, or like footpath versus sidewalk or whatever. Like that, you know, we live in a multicultural and multi-English version of the world. So like I get all of those, but I'm like, this is truly something I have never heard of, and I don't know whether that's because I just don't have any context to that phrase because I use Australian English and Australian turn of phrase. I don't know whether that's because it's an Americanism. I don't know whether it's because maybe the translator wasn't, like, necessarily American. Maybe they're British, or maybe they're, you know, Singaporean or something. And that's a common phrase that's used there. But it just seemed a little bit weird. It just seemed a little bit weird. Again, for like a widely available or the global English version release of this series, it just seems like maybe I don't want to say oversight, because, like, again, I don't know if it's technically wrong or anything. It's just I feel like I can't be the only one with maybe a question mark over over some of that stuff. Anyway, it is like a small thing, but it is something that in the moment when I was reading it, I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I don't know that I've ever heard in my 30 years of life. I don't think I've ever heard that being used.
I do think something I did appreciate was how a lot of, like, Hades speech patterns were translated. I thought they got across how formal and kind of imposing, godlike he is, and how he speaks. So I was quite happy about that. I got his character voice, like, in English as well as in Japanese.
Yeah, I think his character voice and Colette's, obviously as the main character, both of their character voices were very well captured. Like, you could definitely tell their personalities from, like, just how they were speaking to each other. It was
just good, because well done. Colette's a strong personality, so. I like in one of the 1/5 columns, like early, maybe even during the one shot, Yukimura's just like, I wanted to create a heroine who could make, like, a devil face and it would make sense. She very much fits that sort of, like, spunky fantasy Iyashikei type heroine that you see in, like, Snow White with the red hair. It's not just the profession of being a healer that makes her overlap with Shirayuki.
No, they're very strong personalities, in the same way that, like, Yona is a very strong personality, right? It's these are girls who are here to get shit done, and
that's the only thing that makes Zeus's interactions with her at all bearable, is that she's just like, no, Get away from me.
I don't allow that kind of behavior. How dare you? You are doing what I'm saying right now. You don't get a say in this.
Like I said earlier, like, she meets him, like, doubled over from eating a poisonous mushroom. So, like, from there on out, anytime he tries to come on to her, she's just like, mushroom, and gives him, like, trauma from his horrible diarrhea.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's exactly how you should handle a man acting like that. Like,
yes, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, far out. The other, like, I guess, Greek mythy part of this particular omnibus is we do have Hercules show up at one point. Is he, like, a recurring character, or is he just for, like, this... I know they're pen pals, according to
they're pen pals, so sometimes she'll get a letter from him, but that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Or he'll send her tea.
Yeah. Well, you know. Just like the Hercules of myth.
Who was completing tasks for a human king, as we know. And not the goddess of marriage.
No.
Who tried to kill him as an infant.
Well, again, you know, this is some artistic license here, right?
He just shows up and tries to nab Hades' like cute little dogs. And Hades is like, what the fuck?
May, like, those are my dogs.
Who does that?
Why do you even want them?
Those are my dogs.
You came into my house, into my realm. You're trying to steal my dogs, and you think you're the hero? Guy, come on.
Those are my one hobby that I have outside of work. Walking my dogs.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So yeah, I guess we've chatted a bit about, like, just the story overall and the particulars of this volume. We have a couple questions though as well.
Yes.
From our official moderator. Stored on shelves. Thank you for sending in your questions. The first being, I mean, maybe this is a question for you, right? Because you've spent more time with the series. What were your first impressions of the art style?
It was one of the things that drew me to the series. Because I saw the cover of the first volume, which isn't the cover of this omnibus. It's a cover that just has Colette on it. But that was the reason I picked up the first volume in Japan. I really like Yukimura's art style. Obviously you're gonna, like, have a bit of, like, growing pains as, like, here right at the start of the series. But, I mean, even in these volumes, it's very cute, very easy to read, I guess. But especially as it goes on, like, her art has a very storybook quality to it. There's a lot of really good movement to it as well. I really like how she draws, like, the flounciness of Colette's little work dress. Also, like, a talent for drawing just, like, really cute little, like, critters. Cerberus is super cute. The skeletons are super cute. There's an otter who joins the main cast later on, a little river otter that is, like, the most adorable creature I've ever seen in my life. And has a little lisp. So yeah, I really like the art here. I definitely think she is happily indulging in drawing all of Hades' like super ridiculous outfits.
Yes.
That definitely, like, do not reflect any kind of real world fashion from anywhere. So, but, I kind of like that too. We like a self-indulgent artist here at Rewrite to Left, so, yeah, I'm a big fan of the art. Gets the job done well.
I think I agree. To your point, I think the cutesy storybook style of it makes it easier to, I don't want to say accept, but it makes it less of a clash of like being in this vaguely European setting, but then also having Greek myth.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry. And I kind of think it by having this storybook or like fairy tale, not setting, but like stylistic choice, it does make it feel, well, it makes it feel more like a storybook or a fairy tale where you know, there's this kind of, I mean, yes, they're gods, but in the same way that, like, they could be, you know, wizards or something, you know, just not magical and some elves, you know, whatever it is, right? It's just kind of like, oh yeah, you know, this is the story of Little Red Riding Hood and there's a talking wolf. You know, there's kind of a, you just accept that, like, yeah, of course there's gods of the underworld and other such things, and like, yeah, of course the part of the his whole thing is that he's got 3 little puppies, and like,
that
sure,
turn into one big scary dog when you feed them.
That turn into one big scary dog. And then, like, also in her vaguely European hometown village, like, it's just kind of, it's like Spice and Wolf or whatever. Like, there's just people in a town and they till the fields. And, you know, that's cool. That's fine.
Medieval question mark?
Question mark? Like, truly, if, you know, a character popped up, and I know, like, Hercules is, even in this volume, they say he's, like, a demigod. But what does that, like, actually mean? And I don't think it matters, right? So it's like, well, if a wizard or something did pop up, he'd be like, okay, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like, because it is very cute, because it is very, it's an easygoing kind of, I mean, Iyashikei, right? So it's not super dramatic and intense. You can just kind of go with the flow and enjoy the cuteness of it, I think it also lends itself to, like, very, very Iyashikei, but also, like, very shoujo moments of just, like, having your hot male main character, like, sitting and smiling under a tree. And you're like, okay.
Just gets so close to your face and says something that makes your heart go doki doki.
Doki doki.
And whisks you off to the underworld, where he pretends it never happened.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I enjoyed it. It, again, is very reminiscent of something like, I mean, reminiscent in the maybe stylings of, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm not saying this correctly. It kind of reminds me, like, in the actual style of the art, or character design maybe is the better word, of something like Dawn of the Arcana, stuff like that. It's very reminiscent of that. Less so the King's Beast, because obviously that's much more Asian influence, and that's also a much more highly, like, super detailed art style. But even something like Natsume.
I was gonna say Natsume. Because Natsume as well has a very, like, flowy, sort of vague storybook style to its illustration. The backgrounds are very much, I drew exactly as much as I needed to for you to understand where the characters are.
Yeah.
And a lot of the uniqueness comes from the quality of the lines and the movement in the way that the characters are drawn, but also in the unique designs of, like, the creatures. So for me, there's a lot of overlap with what I like about Natsume's art style in Colette, especially as the volumes go on and she really hits her stride.
No, I agree. I think the reason I say something like Dawn of the Arcana is because that has more, like, compared to Natsume, that has more lush, I guess, clothing design stuff. Like, the Hades outfits reminds me more of Dawn of the Arcana.
Yeah.
But the vibe of it is more the Natsume.
Yeah. I feel like most of the characters wear, like, just generic fantasy robes, or, like, if they're women, they wear, like, generic fantasy dress with a flowy skirt. And then, like, every once in a while, there'll be, like, a party or something, and Colette gets to get dressed up in, like, a super pretty, fancy dress that, is just whatever the author felt like drawing. And then Hades wears something that matches, and they're both made by Hades' personal tailor, Harry, so you don't have to worry about the style. It's just, that's Harry's style. That's why it looks like that.
Absolutely. Harry just does what Harry does.
And they do it well. But yeah. I think the art gets the job done. It's charming. It's charming. It's cute.
This is yes, yeah. This is their storied shelves. Next question is probably more of a probably a question better suited to you, Ray, because this is the only one of this creator's works available in English as of right now. But Storied Shelves asks, have you read any of the artist's other work?
Nope.
Short answer? No. I don't think they have, well...
We have, like, a one-shot, a very early one-shot from them included with Volume 1, but it's not really anything to write home about. So...
And then aside from that one shot, they do have a series currently ongoing. But aside from that, like, everything else is like a single volume, maybe 4 or 5 chapters and all.
Yep. This was their big break.
And then last but certainly not least, from Storied Shelves, what do you think sets this series apart from others in similar genres?
For me, again, it's just, like, it hits a lot of my very specific buttons. I like Greek mythology. I like Hades. I like when they make Hades just like a little guy, like a nice little guy. With his dog. I like shoujo with, like, really spunky heroines, and I really like the thematic focus on, like, just a couple of workaholics falling in love with each other and trying to avoid further burnout. So it hits all the things for me. All the little minions are like little zombies and little skeletons. And it's cute. I also like the medical focus as well. Mm-hmm. It kind of, for something this episodic, it's nice that the series gives itself the option to like either focus on like Colette's job or Hades' job. Mm-hmm. So it's like you'll switch between like, you know, this chapter we're going to focus on Colette trying to heal the mysterious ailment of one of the people in her town, or going to the next town over to meet some other healers. And then like the next chapter you'll have like, you know, the Greek god of the week showing up and causing pandemonium. And then at the end of that chapter, like, Hades gets up in Colette's face and says something doki doki. And then you'll have a chapter that's just, like, the skeleton screwing around. Mm-hmm. And it's a nice full repertoire. The series can just kind of pick and choose. That's what I like about this series.
No, I agree. I think, again, I made a point of it when we started. This is very similar to a lot of things. It's not recreating the genre, but I do think that there's real value in the characters and how they interact with each other themselves. Like, I think Colette is a very fun and she's a fun and responsible main character, but also she's someone that you want to see succeed. She's takes a lot of pride in her work, as does Hades, and although he is much more the standoffish of the two, he also has that sense of duty and pride, and both of them to their own detriment, right? So that's, you know, with their relationship, you hope that they kind of balance each other out, because they need someone to just say, hey, you know, no, chill out,
it's okay down. To take a break. It's okay to take a nap.
Yeah. You should eat. Have you eaten today? Maybe you should eat.
You have a fever. You can't go into work today.
Yeah.
Get those shoes off.
So, not to say that Ray and I are projecting, but like there is an element of that. I really enjoy, like, I know Ray's not as much a fan of it as I am, or, well, I don't know that she necessarily likes the series, but I do really enjoy Snow Eye with the Red Hair. That's a series I have been following for a long time, which has similar but different dynamic character. The main characters, Colette and Shiroyuki, are very similar. The male leads are not as similar, at least not initially. I would say that Zen does grow into a much more responsible person over the course of the series, but that is his like character arc.
Yeah. But Hades' arc is like giving himself a break.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're kind of, Zen and Hades are like the counter of each other, right? Where one's growing to become more responsible, the other one like just needs to chill the fuck out.
Yeah, I mean, one of them's also thousands of years old, so
yeah. So
that's,
you know,
one of the funniest like inconsistencies in the series is that like Hades is like thousands of years old, and we're told vaguely that he's had a lot of relationships before. And yet he still acts like the biggest fucking virgin on the planet.
Well, you know. some boys just be awkward.
It's endearing. It's fine.
But I think in particular for the series, like, I do think that the storybook kind of not quite set to any sense of reality or any particular myth, despite being about Greek gods, does have a different feel than if this was just like a straight up fantasy or a straight up like more like Japanese style of fantasy, comparatively to like the Water Dragon's Bride or something, with a more Asian flair.
Or even Natsume.
Yeah, or Natsume as well. It does give it this kind of timeless quality that's like, well, it doesn't really matter where it's set or when it's set, or like if there are inconsistencies to, traditional fantasy, because it's not traditional fantasy. It's just kind of this idea of,
it's where you escape to when you've had a hard day.
Exactly. Like, don't think too much about it. It doesn't need like a logical magic system. It's fine. No power scaling here.
It does have a pretty specific like lore around how death works, but other than that, it's like pretty up in the air. But we've got a Hades judges people, and they go to heaven or they go to hell, and hell is jail, and heaven is a pretty garden. And eventually they get reincarnated.
And the other thing as well, I think, to this point is that, like, I don't know about you, Ray, and I also enjoy, like, Greek mythology, but holy shit, there is a lot of, like, Greek reimagined myths, especially in comics. Not just manga, but just, like, generally novels. There's so many of them, which I'm not like inherently complaining about, but also like, oh my god,
I love the Song of Achilles, but what hath it wrought?
What hath it wrought? Madeline Miller, I love your work. Circe, Song of Achilles,
incredible book.
Fantastic. I await your next full novel, but truly,
what hath she wrought?
She opened Pandora's box to keep this within Greek myth, and we have just ended up with 47,000 different retellings of either Persephone and Hades, like, or Ariadne, or like, oh my god.
It's like all of those have to be like, it's Greek mythology, but it's feminist, but it's like hot feminist. And I kind of appreciate this series being completely divorced from that, like, book trend, and just being like, I don't know, Hades. I don't know.
I don't really know much about Hades, except for he, like, rules the underworld. So
I know, like, a little. I had a book of myths when I was a kid. It's more than most of the kids in my school who don't know where Greece is on a map.
Yeah, exactly. So to that point is, I guess you got to the crux of it, is there's so much like Greek myth retelling and reimagining and feminist reimagination of the heroines of Greek myth. But oh my god, I'm just so, and I've read plenty of them, but not so much like comics, but I've read several of the novels, some much better than others. But
as with anything.
So it's nice to just have like a Greek myth, I guess, reimagining that doesn't give a shit about like sticking to the proper myth and like relationships of characters and stuff.
Yep. She's just making it up as she goes along.
Because the thing is, as well, is that like Greek myth is just like it's so internally inconsistent because it's just a whole bunch of collection of oral tales that at some point it's like, okay, here's a cool story about like these gods, and then like someone else is like, oh, that was a cool character from that story. What if I like create a new story with that character and then like bring in a whole bunch of other characters?
Just like the whole prominence of Hades as a figure in Greek mythology as a whole is a very modern thing because, I mean, the ancient Greeks kind of considered it unlucky to talk about death so much. So there's like 2 myths where he shows up, kind of. It's like inconsistent when he shows up. There's not a whole lot that's like concrete about him as a mythological figure. A lot of it is stuff that's been popularized since like the neoclassical period.
Yes.
So.
And like the only thing that I think most like general people know is that Hades is a wife guy. Like that's he runs the underworld and he's a wife guy. So
and a dog guy.
And a dog guy, but mostly a wife guy. So if there is any like reimaginings of Hades' story, it's always with Persephone, right? Like it's we cannot break up this, you know, fated love of the ages because they are, you know, the OTP for perfection or whatever. But like in this way, by completely removing Persephone and like not even having a well, I guess again to your point, Colette sort of is Persephone, but without having any of that baggage of what Persephone needs to be or who she is in relation to other characters within this world, you have so much more freedom because you're like, well, you don't, so therefore you can't have readers being like, Persephone would never do that. That's not what their relationship is like. This is not the people who get like really into it and get very, very protective of their faves, their Greek myth faves.
Yeah. Actually, I kin Persephone, and I can tell you that I'm not like that.
Oh, gosh. Ray, why do you remind me that the kids sometimes are just not all right?
What if I kin Colette just to piss them off?
Just to counterbalance that? It's like, well, it's offensive to me that you would just erase my existence like that. That you refuse to acknowledge me as a person.
Hades is actually mine. Colette's.
That's not really being an ally very much. You just completely disregarding my existence like that.
My identity, my truth.
Sorry. God, okay, we need to stop talking about this.
We're getting salty. The salt meter's going up. Wee woo.
Wee woo, indeed. Oh, okay. So to that point, I think that's what like not only sets this series apart from like other similar manga within this genre, that are less like Greek myth inspired, but more just like cozy romance, spunky girl, cool guy, trope. But then also like compare the difference of from a more strict Greek myth retelling that like is, I'm almost like hobbled by its own necessity to stick to the myth that it's inspired by, because you think that even these feminist retellings, there's a lot that are like kneecapped, because it's like, well, I can't allow the character to act too out of line with the story because this is what the myth is. So it means
this
that
is why we need more actual Homeric scholars like Madeline Miller writing these.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So that's what makes this different, not only but from other manga, but also like other Greek myth reimaginings. And I think it's worth checking out. Even so, to that point, I think it is worth checking out if you are a shoujo manga fan, but you like give no shit about Greek myths and like the retelling of the Hades and Persephone story or whatever. It's not that in the same way.
Yeah,
that, like,
if you're looking for like the latest romantasy Greek Hades Persephone retelling, straight off the book talk shelf at Barnes and Noble, you'll be sorely disappointed.
Yeah, this isn't Lore Olympus, right? Like, this is just completely...
And thank God for that. I mean, what?
Oh. yeah, okay. But those are our few questions. Is there anything else we want to talk about this series before we wrap it up?
It's really cute. It's really cute. Very, like, I don't know, healthy dynamic between the two of them. It's very, yes. I mean, you know, one of them's thousands of years old, but it's like, whatever, shut up. Doesn't matter. Doesn't fucking matter. People who are like, this is abuse, because this person is an immortal god who's thousands of years old. This is a depiction of an abusive relationship.
Just so fucking tired, Roy. I'm just so tired.
In terms of the way they behave around each other, they're, similar age. They're fine. And they're just like, they both respect each other so much, and they respect each other's successes and their hard work and the things that they value. And that continues to be true for 20 entire volumes. I can say that with confidence.
Yay. That's always a good thing.
And very cute series. I recommend it. Very Hanato Yume vibes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Aside from that, I think this is one that, like, if you are a shoujo fan, as I said, I do think it's worth checking out. And if you are into this kind of sweet romance, not too dramatic or overcomplicated, I do think that, like, this is maybe a perfect series to recommend your library pickup. Because I do think it's one that, like, has very broad appeal. Kids can enjoy this one. There's nothing too, like, spooky or scary about it. And it's one of those series that I feel like if it's available at a library, more people will try it out as well. But it's an easy suggestion for a library, and whether that be a school library or just like a community library, that either works. I think it's kind of a I know we talked about like the omnibus release form of this, but I do think it's nice to see that Viz/Shojo Beat does continue to pick up longer series. It's been a little while since we've had a new, like, long series licensed by them. Obviously, we have like quite a few long series still ongoing from them. But it is nice to know that there is still appetite from publishers, even really like conservative publishers, and I don't mean that politically, I mean that like who worry about making profits back for longer titles, because they do see value and obviously a market of people who are willing to buy them and support them. So if this is your genre and it is something that you're interested in or have been kind of like wanting or have heard good things about, please do support it. Like, I know that there probably is scans of the series, but come on, you know, we're better than that. That's why I do suggest the library. It's a good thing, even if you don't purchase it yourself, to read it legally and support it legally and show that there is interest in this sort of thing. Aside from that, yeah, it was a sweet first couple volumes. I look forward to the rest of it. I think this one, well, as to what Ray has said, not only in this podcast, but before, it's very cozy. It's one of those series that, like, you can just, every time there's a new volume out, you can just sit down and pick up where you last left off and then finish it and then not think about it until the next volume. You know, it's not pretty like much. You have to reread previous volumes to, like, remember where the story was, which is sort of my issue right now when I get back to things.
Oh no, we're getting old.
Every day, Ray. Every day.
Always nice to just jump back in for a little bit.
With that, though, I think this very first volume debut episode as well, a little bit of a different format, is done and dusted. Next month, Ray, we have a lot more reading to do.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Next month.
What are we doing next month?
December. As with all Decembers, now and in the past, and hopefully in the future, we will be doing our top 10, top 5 each.
Top 5 each.
Becoming top 10 favorite debuts for the year. Yes. That is all of our new favorite series for 2024, across every and all publishers. And there's a lot of reading I have to get done.
Yeah.
Every year there's like a new publisher and new series. Like, obviously there's always new stuff coming out, but then like there'll be an entire new publisher like created within the last 12 months that has licensed and released something interesting. And I'm like, what? How? No! I already have no time.
Yeah. Post in the comments below what number you think Colette is going to be on my list. But I also wanted to, right here at the end, just shout out that we literally, day before yesterday, got a very, very exciting license announcement from Seven Seas.
Holy shit. So for those, I mean, this is still the past, but we just got the license for the 12 Kingdoms light novel. The 12
Kingdoms!
License rescue. Holy moly. This is maybe the best day of our combined lives. I don't know that it's like, this is really a win. There's been very few. I'm not gonna say this is. Well, I don't know. This is maybe the best license rescue I think we've experienced. There's been, for us particularly, there's been new licenses that have been as exciting or surprising, namely Shonen Note. But for like a license rescue, that seemed like it kind of seemed like a no-brainer. The fact that it took so long was making me sad and
well, it's like for faith. So many years it felt like this is never ever going to happen, and then light novels started hitting off. Seven Seas got really good at releasing them. We started getting Danmei. We started getting like, you know, more complicated light novels that
J-Novel
have
Club,
these
like became a whole thing. It's just
and we started getting like the otome like light novels, the like villainess light novels and stuff, and it's just like this weird new world in which the 12 Kingdoms should be a no-brainer. And we're finally getting it. And if you guys don't know, back in the day, Tokyopop released the first 4 in English. This was like kind of right on the tail end of Tokyopop. So like the first volume has a real nice like hardcover release. And then they just like decline drastically in quality with each volume, and the translation also gets worse, and we are getting a new translation, which I'm very excited about, because I think that it'll be nice to see some of the volumes after the first getting what they deserve, as well as hopefully getting books that go past what the anime covered in English at long last. Especially, oh my god, I want the second Taiki book so bad.
The thing is as well, like, the other part of this fantastic news is that the translator is fantastic. They are very, very good at what they do.
And a huge, like, light novel fan.
Yes. Yeah, so Kim Morrissey, or Frog-kun, as they're known online, has announced that they are the the translator. Their husband is Callum is the editor. So I feel like that would have led to very interesting conversations over the dinner table. Especially considering they have like a 1-year-old. But it's kind of a reassurance, namely because I know that Kim does do very, very good work in the translation scene. So it's nice that this isn't just being like punted off and hopefully not rushed out. We'll see once we get that first novel. I really want these to be hardcovers as well. I don't know that we'll get that, but I feel like that's what it deserves.
They are such good books.
They are such good books.
But like, not just as light novels, but like just YA fantasy. They're incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy amazing. That's really probably the best note to end the year on, licensing wise. I don't know that we've had some really exciting licenses actually this year. I can't believe in the year 2024 we're getting a new Fumi Yoshinaga manga licensed. That's a big G win. So it's been a really exciting year for licenses. It's also been a really exciting year for actual releases. We've had at least 2 new publishers start this year. I know nothing about any of their releases yet, though, so we'll see. But because of that, we have a lot of reading to do. I know I sure as heck haven't read as much this year as I have in previous years, so there's a lot of catch up to do. I feel you might be in the same boat.
Yep.
Yeah. So as per always, you can, rather than send in questions for us to answer regarding a particular series, let us know your favorites for 2024, the new releases that you've been enjoying, or maybe even the series that aren't from this year, like weren't actually published this year, but are new to you and you've been enjoying over the last 12 months. And hopefully, I mean, we spoke about it off air, but hopefully we won't have a similar situation as to last year where the two of us found or experienced the two worst manga series in the world, independent of each other, and was filled with such blind hatred that we had to talk about it for an hour.
And what? And they both have anime adaptations.
Yeah. So
no justice in the world.
No, absolutely no justice. That was a very fun thing to do last year / beginning of this year, was to bitch about two technically very popular series for an hour. But we don't actually try to go into this looking for things to hate. We are not haters. That is not our final form most of the time. I think we try to do this hobby as like a fun thing that enriches our life, not because we want to get angry and confused.
Charlie.
So, although hopefully we do not run into another Darwin incident as we peruse this year's new releases, if there is a particular series that you hated that you tried this year, maybe let us know. Maybe flag it. Whether or not that's a flag for us to try it out or to avoid it completely, we'll have to see.
What are you manifesting into the universe, G?
Oh, well, you know. Aside from that, you can find us on, the bad site. Well, actually, technically, no. I am still on there. I haven't, deleted my account, but I am officially removing myself from Twitter. I do have a Blue Sky. It is, simply G, all one word, whatever the thing is. It's simply G. So you can find me there. Ray, have you made the jump yet?
No.
Okay.
But it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen
every day. I wanted to leave Twitter on a high note, so that day that the 12 Kingdoms was announced, I was like, you know what?
That's a good choice.
This is
an excellent choice.
This is the best way I could wash my hands of this.
It's Thanksgiving break now. I might have time to think about it finally.
Until then, you can still find Ray on the site formerly known as Twitter at whimsicalpix. That's PIX. You can also find me on my YouTube channel and this podcast on my YouTube channel, Simply G. You can also find newest episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. I don't remember if there's any others, but all the main podcasting platforms. We do appreciate all of you listening, and we super duper appreciate everyone who rates and leaves a review. It's kind of crazy that so many people listen to us. We've been doing this we've been doing this kind of a horrifically long time now, right?
I don't want to think about it.
I don't think when we started we expected that more than 5 years down the line we'd still be doing this. in the same way that we are. But it's so much fun, and it's, I think, a great time. And all of you wonderful listeners, like, thanks for hanging out with us. Because really, that's what it is. Yeah. So,
yeah.
You know, have fun. Enjoy your manga. Catch you in the next video.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Hey everyone, Editing G here. I just would like all of you to know that Frey has since moved to Blue Sky. You can find her at Whim, WHIM, Pix, PIX, all one word. We also have put together a dedicated Blue Sky for the podcast, so you can follow all of the actual questions and updates with the podcast itself at read write number 2 left. So if you enjoy the podcast, if you're wanting to see what's going on and you want the newest episodes as soon as they're released, follow us on there. Thanks.